This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah, so today just we are going to understand as part of the Salesforce development what exactly we are going to discuss and so what we cover as part of this Salesforce development training. If someone is joining directly without knowing the knowledge of Salesforce administration, okay, so the thing is one of the prerequisite is you should have the basics of the Salesforce administration. Okay, so
Hi,
without the
Srinu.
basics, yeah, hi.
I'm Nagendra, so I joined in the development session directly, so I have a knowledge on admin side.
Yeah, then that is fine. Okay, at
Yes.
least if you know what is object, field,
Yes.
the relationships between the objects.
Yes,
So
I have.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
knowledge on.
if you know those things, I think you can continue with the development.
Yeah.
So if someone
That-
if they are starting newly and if they don't know what is Salesforce and so what we do here. So for them, I think I'm recommending to have the basics, knowing the basics of the Salesforce admin. Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So any other questions?
No, Srinu.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
good.
So yeah, please go on mute. If you have question again, you can unmute and ask your question. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just to be very clear, the basics of the Salesforce admin. So at least you should know. So what is object, what is field, the basic terminology of the Salesforce. Okay. So now as part of the development, so what exactly we are going to discuss, I'll explain. So already we discussed Salesforce is a cloud-based platform. Salesforce company provide two types of services. So one is software as a service. The other one is platform as a service. As part of the platform as a service, Salesforce is offering a platform called Force.com platform. We say Force.com nowadays, Salesforce.com platform. So on this platform, okay, so what exactly we can develop? So that we are going to understand. Okay, as part of the Salesforce administration, right? So Salesforce offers some of the applications by default as a service, marketing, sales, and service those applications. They also provide some out-of-the-box configuration tools. Already we discussed and we understood how we configure using the configuration tools. So the platform beyond the configuration tools, it's not that all the requirements we can achieve with the point and click configuration tools. Some of the requirements we need to do the development to achieve the client requirement. So that time using the platform, so we develop the some of the custom functionality. We call this right. So this course as a Salesforce development course, developer course, right? Or people say customization. Customization means we write the code, right? So Salesforce people when sometimes say customization, development, dev, right? So as part of this, so what exactly we do? Okay, so the thing is when you take any platform to develop the application, um, there are few things. Let's say we need to develop one of the application from the scratch. Let's say we need to develop one of the custom web page. Okay, so what exactly we need to use to develop the page? So when you interact on the page in the background, what is the logic it execute, how it connects to database, right? All those things we need to know as a developer. Okay, so as part of the Salesforce platform, so when you deal with any application, right? So if I open an application, if you see there is a web page. So when you click on this, right? So in background, some logic will execute. And finally, it is opening some form. So after filling this form, and if I click on save, right? So some validations are happening in the background. If I populate everything and save, the information will be saved into database, right? Whatever we see on the UI, whatever we see on the page, right? That we call as UI. UI means user interface, right? So when we interact on the UI, in the background, some logic will execute. The business logic will execute, right? So after executing that logic, what it will do, it will try to save the information in the database, or it will try to read the information from the database and display on the UI page. So like that, right? So this business logic will interact with the database. Okay. So now as a developer, as a Salesforce developer using Salesforce platform, we need to know how to develop the UI, the web page. We also need to know how we write the business logic. We also need to know how we can write the database commands. Okay, those are the things we are going to discuss as part of this training. Okay, so to develop the UI, in general, to develop the UI, if you take any browser, Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer, browsers can understand only HTML, right? So mostly HTML. In general, web pages can be developed using HTML. Okay, again, when we say web page, okay, so we have the UI. This is a web page. This is the UI. For the UI, we use HTML, and also some client-side validations. So that means when you click on a button or something, within the browser, it can execute some script and it will display some validation errors kind of thing. So for that, we use JavaScript. Okay. So JavaScript, it execute within the browser, either Chrome or Firefox or maybe Microsoft Edge, whatever the browser we open. Within the browser, this logic will execute. Okay, so after that, so one more thing, to style the HTML, right? So the look and feel, the placement, where it should be, how it should align. So we use CSS, right? CSS means cascading style sheets. To apply the styles, to decide where it should align, what should be the color, and what should be the background, what should be the font, all those styles we keep using CSS. Okay, when we say UI, the UI layer will have all these things. Okay, but when we deal with Salesforce, so we don't directly write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so within the Salesforce platform, similar to HTML, by simplifying what we need to develop, instead of writing huge HTML and CSS JavaScript logic, Salesforce, they are offering their own framework where we can develop the web page and we can develop the screens which match with the Salesforce look and feel. We see this is the website. If some of you are very new, to get the Salesforce account, you need to go to developer.salesforce.com. Okay, so you need to click on sign up and fill the details, first name, last name, provide the valid email address, choose anything here, developer or something, and the username should be something@something.com, right? So maybe you can say gokul@airtel.com or gokul@home.com or whatever you want, you can give. Okay, it's like a Gmail, and sign up and have your account. Okay, once you sign up to login, you need to open login.salesforce.com, enter username, enter password, and login, so that you will be logged in. Okay, so this just understand. Okay, already I logged into the account. Already, if you see here, this as part of the admin, we registered for one of the account, and already I logged into that account. Okay, so now, yeah, any questions?
So we have to create another account for this developer edition.
No. So already, if you have account as part of the administration,
Okay.
continue using the account. Okay, I'm just explaining because sometimes I think if someone joins directly for development, for them I'm explaining. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So now, so what I'm trying to explain. So this, in general, this is a normal process to develop the web page, but Salesforce, they are providing their own framework to develop the web pages. So when we develop that, matching to the Salesforce standard look and feel, right? Now, when you open one of the page by login to Salesforce, how it is looking. So with that look and feel, developing the web page, and so with the framework, how Salesforce is offering this page for us as a standard. So all that we can do. So for that, so Salesforce offering their own framework. Okay, so to develop the UI, so one of the first framework what they are offering is Visual Force. Okay, so the Visual Force, so actually initially when Salesforce started to develop some custom page, so we use it to create S control. Okay, so this was the combination of HTML and JavaScript, CSS, everything. Right. So later, to make it better, I think around in the year 2005 or 4, they introduced Visual Force, a better framework when compared to S control. So here we need to use the similar to HTML. Visual Force is one of the markup language, right? We use Visual Force markup, and inside the Visual Force markup, still if you want, you can also write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, all those things. So a better framework when compared to S control. But now you never see this S control. This was completely deprecated. Deprecated means you don't see this S control anywhere, even the oldest customer of the Salesforce. Okay, so still you see the Visual Force, the markup language. You see some UI screens developed with Visual Force. Okay, so this is having the own markup, Visual Force markup. Plus, still if you want, we use this HTML. All these things we can write inside that. So that is possible. Okay, so mostly this Visual Force markup, whatever we have, in Salesforce, we have Salesforce Lightning Experience. At present, whatever you are seeing, this is the Lightning Experience. And click on this switch to Classic. This look and feel, right? So this is the Classic look and feel, right? So this look and feel. So if you see here how the pages looks when you try to open a screen, how it is looking. So mostly with this, how Salesforce developed this screen. So behind the scenes, they used Visual Force, right? So same framework. So you see with Visual Force. Okay, so we develop the page. When you develop easily to match the classic, we can develop the screens with the markup, the tags, whatever Salesforce offer. So like that. Okay, that is this Visual Force markup. Okay, so later in 2000, I think here I'm not writing years, but in I think around 2014-15, Salesforce they introduced one more better framework, so Lightning components. Okay, so nowadays we are calling these Lightning components as Aura components. Okay, this is a better framework when compared to Visual Force. Salesforce, so almost they introduced this in 2005. In 2014, no need to remember all these years and all. Okay, just for our reference I'm keeping. Okay, so Lightning components was introduced around this year. So that time only Salesforce introduced Lightning experience also, the latest look and feel. Okay, so this is better when compared to Visual Force. So one of the reason, this Visual Force browser cannot understand Visual Force. Okay, when you develop a Visual Force page, by default the browser cannot understand Visual Force. What will happen every time whenever we try to open the page will be sent to Salesforce server. In server, Salesforce convert that Visual Force into HTML and return that HTML to display on the browser, because browsers can only understand HTML, right? So that means if you don't have internet in between, let's say after opening the page, if your internet is gone, if you want to go to next page or something, so it won't execute. It needs internet, and it should reach Salesforce server. Whenever you click on something, it should reach Salesforce server and convert that HTML into, Visual Force into HTML. So it needs more server interaction. Okay, so but Lightning components within the browser, most of the UI elements will be loaded within the browser without requiring the internet. Okay, so more performance when compared to Visual Force. So due to that reason, Salesforce they introduced Lightning components, one of the new frameworks. Okay, so later again, still here, right? These things are common. Still here, we also write HTML code snippets and everything. Okay, and in 2019, Salesforce they introduced LWC. LWC means Lightning Web Components. You see, Lightning Components, Lightning Web Components sounds like both are sounding same, right? To avoid the confusion, so nowadays we started calling this Lightning components as Aura components, because internally it uses a open source framework called Aura. So that's why now in some places you see people calling Aura, or in some options you see Aura component like that. So just understand that it's the Lightning component. Lightning Web Component LWC, which is more latest. Okay, so when compared to this is even more faster. Okay, so the framework, okay, more details when we start with the UI development, I'll explain. Okay, so you can say it is more advanced and more faster when compared to Aura components. Okay, just keep that in mind. Still here we use HTML snippets and everything. Okay, so those are common. Okay, so as part of the UI development, we deal with these things. Okay, so not in-depth HTML or in-depth CSS. So no need to have in-depth knowledge. So medium level. So just if you understand, we can develop and we can achieve the requirements. Okay, and also after developing the web page, when we interact with this page, when we click on something, in background some logic is executing, right? That we are calling business logic. So here for that we use a programming language. Okay, so I think one of the famous language is Java, right? Java, Python, .NET, C++, right? So here, which programming language we use? Okay, here we don't use Java, right? So here we use a programming language called Apex. Okay, you can say it looks similar to core Java, right? Core Java is the basic Java. So when you see basic Java program, how it looks, in the same way you also see the Apex program, the Apex programming language, right? So this is the programming language we use. Okay, so not Java. Okay, so we write Apex, but in the background, so this Apex will be converted into Java and execute on Salesforce server. Okay, that we don't bother about that. So our job as a Salesforce developer, we need to understand the syntax of the Apex language, and we need to develop the Apex programming language. Okay, just understand about this one. So the next thing, yeah, this is the most important, right? If you see over the years, you see all these things are changing, right? Changing. Now this is the latest, but business logic is almost the same from beginning of the Salesforce. So same Apex language, but you see some modern features or something on top of that, but mostly same basics. Okay, this is the key for everything. Okay, this first we discuss this as part of this training, so later the other things. Okay, and also, so when we develop the programming, when we develop a program using Apex, okay, so how it interact with the database to read the data in the database or to save the data into database, right? So for that, we also need to know about the database commands, right? So again, nowadays in the market, there are different types of database. So you might hear about Oracle, SQL Server, MongoDB. There are many database models are there in the market. Okay, so the attack is in the background. Salesforce, they use Oracle, but we don't bother about knowing the Oracle, how we deal, all those kind of things. Okay, here on the Salesforce platform, we say what the database Salesforce offer, we call that as a Salesforce database. To interact with that database, to read, to save data. So here we use some markup languages, SOQL, SOSL, DML. Okay, so maybe you might hear about SQL, right? SQL means structured query language, something like that, right? So here we use SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language. Here in Salesforce Object means table. Okay, Salesforce Object Search Language, data manipulation language. So these commands we need to know to work with the development. So it's not in depth. If you see with 1 hour, 2 hours discussion, we'll be understanding about all the different commands what we write to interact with the database. It's very easy. Okay? It's not too much complex. It's just the matter of 2 hours learning. Okay, and this most of the times first we need to understand all these basics. Later we know the basics and the different types of Apex programs. Then we can see how we develop the UI. Okay, so apart from this, okay, as part of this training, you might hear about a concept called integration. Okay, so people ask, do you cover integration, right? We also discuss about integration. Okay, so integration is also like Apex, right? This is also part of the Apex. Okay, but it can be combined with the UI and all those kind of things, right? So integration, or let's say web services, right? Or API development, right? So as part of the integration, there are few key concepts. Okay, so first you need to know what is SOAP API integration, REST API integration, how the authentication happens, and all those kind of things. So why we need to integrate? There are some reasons why we need to integrate. Let's say you are working for one of the client. Let's say Philips Healthcare, right? There is a healthcare company, Philips, and you are working for that company Salesforce here. Okay, so that company, I think they are using Salesforce for CRM, but that company they have SAP application for ERP, right? They have, let's say, for accounting software they are using QuickBooks, one more other platform, right? So there are different platforms, right? So Salesforce, right? The short form for Salesforce is SFDC. When you search for job, you see SFDC admin, SFDC developer, like that, right? So we, in the short form, we call Salesforce as salesforce.com SFDC. Okay, so maybe the client is using SFDC, Salesforce for CRM, right? Maybe SAP for ERP or some other platform, right? So maybe QuickBooks is a platform for accounting like Tally, right? So same client, right? So maybe in our example, we are saying Philips, same company. They are using Salesforce for CRM, SAP for ERP, right? All these applications belongs to same client. So now they want some interaction between Salesforce.com and SAP, right? They want to read some information from Salesforce, which is present in SAP. So in those kind of situations, we need to perform the integration. Okay, to achieve integration, we have SOAP API, REST API, and some of the mechanisms. Okay, so all these things are mostly part of Apex. For these things, we write the Apex logic and integrate. Okay, all these things we discuss as part of this training. So now, so how we start? First, we start with Apex programming language. First 15 classes, mostly, we discuss about Apex and database commands and integrations, right? All those kind of things we cover. Okay, so I mean it takes more than 15 classes. Okay, and after that we deal with UI. Okay, so here this is not there now, fully deprecated. No need to think about this. Okay, but still you see some of the clients using Visual Force. Still we should know the basics of the Visual Force. Yes, I'll explain the basics, uh, how we create the Visual Force page and some of the basics how we create. Okay, that is required because in some projects still Visual Force is used. Okay, and later we also understand about Aura components, because from 2015 to until this year. There are many companies still developed some of the components with this Aura. Okay, we should know the basic understanding at least to work on the existing Aura components and to make modifications. We should have the basic understanding about this. Okay, we'll discuss about that, and also LWC, right? This is latest. So any new development, any new web page or any new enhancement, okay, first we should mostly try creating that using LWC, Lightning Web Component. Okay, so this is latest, and in most of the companies, so people suggest to use LWC because which is latest and which is having more performance. Okay. Sorry. So we focus more on this one, and for LWC we use more JavaScript when compared to Visual Force or Lightning. For LWC, so we use more JavaScript. Okay, so before starting LWC, I'll explain the modern JavaScript. Modern means is like say ES6. From ES6 version, ES means ECMAScript. That's the version of the JavaScript. So from that version, there are many changes happen for JavaScript. Okay, so those concepts we should know. So before starting LWC, so maybe 3 classes or something, we need to know how we deal with the JavaScript. Okay, so this requires more JavaScript. There is a exclusive certification. Okay, so JavaScript developer 1. Okay, so we deal with the JavaScript and LWC more. There are things, only basics I'll explain. Okay, this became mandatory nowadays. Okay, that's what we do. That's what we discuss at high level as part of this training. Okay, so in depth, there are many topics. When you take Apex, there are many topics, right? So when you deal with this, there are different types of commands. So when you deal with LWC, there are many concepts as part of the Lightning Web Components. You can see those in syllabus. Maybe in the link, whatever I provided, if it is not there, just I'll try to provide this full contents to you. Okay. So that's about that part. Okay. So now we start with Apex programming language. So before starting, so any questions, anyone? Before starting this Apex programming, the basics of the Apex programming. Any questions? Okay. Okay, so here we use Apex programming language. Okay, so people ask already, do I need to know about the programming? Should I learn Java and attend the Salesforce training? So no. Okay, so as part of this training, I'll explain from very basics. I'll start from what is a program and understand how the basic program we can create. Slowly we understand all the in-depth concepts. Okay, so if you don't know about any programming language already, it is fine. Okay, I'm going to explain from the basics. Okay, so just to understand that. So now, so before starting with this programming language, okay, so Apex language. So the first thing, the programming language is case sensitive or case insensitive. That's the first thing we learn when we start with any programming language. Okay, so the point is Apex is case insensitive. Okay, so that means irrespective of the cases, it works, right? So for example, when I say my Apex program, right? If I say Apex program, right, there is a difference in the case. Instead of capital M, I am giving small m. So when we deal with this Apex programming language, it treat both as same. It won't treat these two as different. But when you deal with Java, Java is case sensitive. I think .NET is also case sensitive. Okay, if there is a change in the case, so system treat this as different, this as different, like that. But Apex is not like that. Apex is a case insensitive language. Okay, so just understand. Now, first we understand what is a program, how the program can be formed, and so what are the different elements in a program. So what are the possible different types of elements in a program. So all those things we are going to understand. Okay, for that I'm going to open one document. Okay, I'm just trying to open a document. Okay, so just try to compare with the normal language on day-to-day whatever we use, and slowly we understand the terminology of a program and understand the different basics. Okay, so now, so we know English, right? So on day-to-day, so we write English and we read English, right? All those kind of things. So if you treat, right, so if you want to write a sentence in English, right, so how we form that one, right? So this is the first demo class for development, right? I'm combining multiple words, right? This is one word and this is one word, and I'm combining everything and I'm forming one of the sentence, right? And if you want to write one more sentence, we are giving full stop and again something like this, right? So keep on, I can write something and it becomes a paragraph, and multiple paragraphs become one big um, text on the page, right? So like that we continue, right? So here one sentence is equal to a statement in the programming language. Okay, so in programming language, right? So if you think that one page of English what we write is like one program. Okay, so how the how the how that is formed? First we need to frame the sentence. By combining multiple sentences, it becomes a paragraph, like that, right? So here sentence in programming terminology we call that as a statement, right? So in programming languages, so one sentence what we write is like one statement. We technically call as a statement, right? So to form the sentence, we are using multiple words, right? Multiple words. By combining, we are forming the sentence. So if you don't use these things, right, in a proper order, right? If I don't arrange these things in a proper order, it won't give the meaning, right? It won't give the proper meaning, right? When you are combining these words, we have to combine in a proper way by following the grammar, right? English. Okay, so we need to follow the grammar. By following the grammar, we have to frame the sentence. Then only it gives the meaning. Otherwise, it won't give the proper meaning. In the same way, so maybe in English language we use grammar to form the meaningful sentence by combining multiple words. So here, word we call as token in programming language, not only Apex. If you take any other programming language, the basic terminology to refer. So the word we call as token. Okay, by combining multiple tokens. Token is like a word. By combining, right? You can form a statement. While forming the statement, we need to follow the syntax, right? Like a grammar, right? So here we need to follow the syntax as per the programming language, whatever we did. Just terminology wise, there is a difference. Instead of word, here we call as token. Instead of grammar, here we are calling as syntax. Instead of sentence, here we are calling as statement, right? So by combining multiple sentences, we form the paragraph, right? But when you form the when you keep multiple sentences together, those sentences should be in a proper order. If you don't arrange your sentences, the paragraph won't give the proper meaning, right? Here, same way in the program, right? When you write multiple statements, we need to arrange those statements in a proper order. So that we call as flow. Flow means a specific proper order. So first which statement should execute, and after that which statement should execute. That order we have to maintain. Then only it becomes a meaningful program. So like that. And also if you see, when you say word in English, so we use nouns, adjective, verb, right? So maybe this is a noun, right? This is so verb, right? These kind of things. So we use, right, different types of words. In the same way, the token can be a keyword or identifier or operator or literal. So when we say the token as a keyword, when we say the token as a identifier, that we'll discuss. Okay, for now, if you don't know what to call, you can call that you can call that as a token. Okay, so just understand that one. Okay, so here let's start writing one of the statement and try to understand. So what are the different types of tokens? So when we call that one as a keyword and when we call that one as an identifier, all those things. Okay. Now, so before starting, right, in English, each and every sentence we separate with full stop, right? In programming language, each and every statement we end with the semicolon, right? So like this, instead of full stop, we use semicolon. Okay, maybe here we write the sentence one after the other, but in programming language, so we write in a next line. Okay, so like that, some slight differences will be there. Okay, so let's start writing a first before writing, right? So when we write the program, there are different types of sentences. Sentences means statements, right? We develop different types of statements. So first we understand what are the different types of statements, and slowly I'll write a program and explain in detail how it works. Okay, so even if you see English, right, it's a normal sentence, and we also, right, use some compound sentences by combining, right, something like this, right? So we combine multiple sentences together, right? We call this as a compound sentence like that. In the same way, when we develop the statements in a program, there are different types. Okay, first we are going to understand the different types of statements, what we write in a program, and slowly we write a program. Okay, so types of statements. Okay, here all the basics, whatever I am going to explain to understand about Apex programming language. Maybe for other programming languages, the rules and the syntax, right? Syntax is like a grammar. All those things will be different. Okay, so here we are dealing with Apex programming language. For Apex programming language, what we need to know. So those basics, sorry, I'm going to touch. Okay, so here I'm just classifying these different types of statements we see on a day-to-day when we write the program. Okay, the first type, memory statements. Okay, so what is that memory statement? I'll explain. First, I'm listing out. Next, arithmetic, logical statements. The next one, conditional statements. Looping or controlling statements like this, right? And finally, input or output statements. Okay, so these are the different types of statements. In general, whenever we see a program, we see one of this type of statement. Okay, first we are going to understand about the memory statement. So what is this memory statement and why we use this memory statement, right? So the thing is, whenever we write a program, right, the purpose of writing any program is to do some calculation, right, to do some automation. So instead of doing manually, the program can do quickly, right? Let's say I want to add 20 numbers. If you add manually, instead of adding manually, if you use calculator is very faster, right? When you type automatically, there is a program in background which will run and give the accurate result, right? So like that. Okay, so when we enter multiple numbers in calculator and keep on use plus minus all those things, all those numbers, how the calculator, right, for us as a human, we have memory, right? In our memory we remember and try to add and give the result. In the same way, when we deal with the programming, the calculator or anything, right, calculator, to hold the numbers and the operators whatever we give, it needs some memory, right? It stored that uh, data whatever we supply in some place temporarily, and finally it calculates and gives the result, right? To hold the data whatever we input, some memory it should need, memory space, right? Like in our computer we have the hard disk, right? We say I have 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, all our files will store in that, right? But also in our computer, if you see, instead of along with the hard disk, right? People say I have 8 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, like that, right? So here, when I say memory, it is like a RAM, random access memory RAM. So it holds temporarily. It's not permanent. Permanent means it is database, right? Database is the place where all our data stores, like the files which we store in our hard disk, right? But RAM, so what is the purpose of RAM in the computer? When you say 8 GB RAM, 16 GB RAM, or 3 GB RAM, right? When you open our laptop, we open many applications. We see in my laptop, I opened this GoToMeeting. I opened this Visual Studio Code, one of the tool. I opened a browser. I opened many websites in the browser. So all these things occupy space, needs memory to run, right? All these things will be consumed from the RAM. My system is having 3 GB RAM. So from that, if I try to open an application which is beyond my RAM, whatever I have, let's say if I open a game, right, video game. So let's say to load that game, it requires 5 GB, but I have only 3 GB, it will hang, right? So like that. So like that here, when we write the Apex program to deal with the data, the input data, output data means after doing the calculation, whatever the result is there to store that, right? So it needs some memory temporarily, and also that is not unlimited like the RAM in my system. Okay, so to run the Apex program, okay, so at runtime there is a limit. Okay, it is 6 MB. Okay, again you see 12 MB for asynchronous. Those things we see little later. Okay, so just to understand easily, I'm explaining. Okay, it's like a RAM. So based on how many applications we open, that much memory it consumes from the RAM. In the same way, when we write the program to hold the data what we input, or after doing calculation to hold that output, so we need to mention, okay, how much memory you want to allocate for the data. Okay, so if you don't allocate specific memory, right, let's say always it is assigning same amount of memory, so that memory will be wasted, because when we deal with the data, we deal with the different types of data. Okay, maybe we deal with a number, we deal with a text, maybe we deal with uh, maybe file, or different right images. We want to hold that as a data. So there are different formats of the data we deal, right? So for all the types, if system allocates the same amount of memory will be wasted, right? Sometimes true or false, right? True or false won't require more memory. So to utilize the memory in a better way, when the program started executing based on the type of data, it only allocate that much data. Okay, so for that, so whenever we try to declare the input or output kind of data memory, we mention the type, what type of data we are dealing. Okay, that's why you see data types concept when you deal with any programming language. Most of the times you see the data types. Okay, now here whatever I am going to explain, I'm going to explain for Apex programming languages, Apex programming language, what are the supported data type? That I'm going to explain. Okay, so here data types. Okay, so first I list out all the data types, and after that we understand about each and every type, and we use these types to allocate the memory, and I'll explain how we assign the value to that memory. Right, it's like that. Okay, so the first so all these are related to Apex programming language. Okay, the first type is, I'm saying, blob. Okay, blob is one of the data type. Okay, the full form is binary large object, right? So that means it stores the attachment, right? Attachment can be a image, attachment can be a image or a document or PDF or so any other files, right? To hold some kind of attachments, right? Files, maybe attachment or file, right? File means more meaningful. So we use the type called blob, binary large object. Okay, I'll show you how we use these things later, right? I'm just listing out. The next type is Boolean. Okay, so Boolean type, when you allocate memory with the Boolean type, in that memory we can store either true or false values. Okay, true or false. We store true or false. Okay, and also, so when you allocate the memory using Boolean, right? System allocate memory. If you don't keep any data into that memory, by default it hold null. Null means it's like empty box. We did not keep anything, right? But in that, let's say if you think that this memory is like one box, so based on the size of the box, we can keep the content, right? So when you allocate the Boolean, it's like one box. In that you can only keep either true or false. You cannot keep anything else. Okay, if you don't keep anything, by default it holds empty, right? Empty is here null. It's like that. Okay, we'll discuss more about that little later. So the next type, date, data type. Okay, so here date. So we have different types of date formats, right? Based on the country, based on different factors, we see the different formats of the date. The US standard is MMDD YY, right? Maybe in India we follow DD YY, right? So like that, different types of date formats. Okay, so we just deal with these types of to store one of the format in a meaningful way. So we use this date data type. Okay, the next one is date time, is one more data type. So along with the date, right, it also stores the time. Okay, so time, again, it will be having a different format like hours, minutes, right? Seconds, again, milliseconds, there are many things. Time zone, many things. So to hold along with the date, the time also. So the time we deal with the date time data type. Okay. So few things don't need time to hold. Let's say date of birth. So people don't bother about the time. The date, right? Let's say you joined in a company, date of joining, only date. but few things needs time also. Let's say you are going to a movie, the start time, their time is important along with the date, right? So to deal with that, we use date time. Okay. The next one is decimal type. Okay. So decimal is like a number. Okay. Decimal number means along with the number, we also keep some decimal digits. Let's say if you deal with the price, right? So $4.99, right? So it needs decimal digits also, right? So this we call as decimal types. Okay. So along with the number, the decimal digits can be maintained. So if you want to hold huge decimal value, means very big decimal number. Okay. So sometimes up to millions and all we can read, right? I can say 1 million, 2 million, 10 million. If it is more than that, if it is very huge, sorry. So that time, so to hold like exponential and all, right? In mathematics, we use to hold that. There is a type called large. Sorry, long. Okay, so there is a data type. So we use this. Sorry, double. Okay, there is a data type called double. So we use this double data type. Okay, so huge decimal value, maybe some exponential and all those kind of things will be there, like so exponential to something like this. To hold those kind of things, we use the double data type. I can say large decimal value. Okay, so that time we use this double data type. Very rare. Okay, mostly we use this decimal type. Okay, so the next one, ID is one of the data type. Okay, so ID, if you attended administration training, so we have objects, right? In Salesforce, object is like a database table. Whenever we store any record in the object, the uniqueness of the record will be maintained using the record ID. The record ID can be either 15 digit or 18 digit. So we use this ID data type to hold either 15 or 18 digit ID. Okay, so for that we use this ID data type. Okay. The next one is integer data type. Okay, so integer is also number, but without any decimal digits. Let's say if you are counting, right? We say 1, 2, 3. We don't say 1.5, 2.5, right? So when you deal with a quantity, we say 10, 100, 500 quantity, right? So that time we need some rounded number. We don't want any decimal digits. So that time we go with this integer type. Okay. The next one is long. Long is like to hold the huge integer value, like large integer value, including exponential and everything. That time we use this long. This is also very rare. So almost I never use this double or long. Okay. The next thing, object is one of the data type. Okay, so if you want to hold the generic value, okay, generic value, if you don't know what is the size, right? Just you want to hold any size of the value. sorry, any type of the data in a generic way, that time we use this object data type. Right, when we define the memory with object, since we don't know what is the which kind of value we are going to store, we don't know whether it is a number or whether it is a date or it is a boolean, like that. So that time we define the type as object so that any kind of data can fit into that. That is generic type to hold any type of value. Okay, so that we use object to data type. The next one is string. Okay, so string data type to hold the text. Okay, starting with character, maybe the word or sentence or paragraph, right? If you want to store the text value, that time we use string. Okay, so starting with single character to anything. Only the rule is the string value, whatever we give, we have to keep inside single quote and not double quote. Okay, here in Apex we use single quotes. Something you can type, right? Whatever you want, you can type and can hold. It can hold, the string can hold. Okay, and the other one is time. Right? If you want to store only that time, okay, you don't bother about the date, right? You only bother about the time, right? So the time we use this type time. Okay, so these are the data types available which we use as part of the Apex programming language. Now we know these different types. Using this type, how we allocate the memory, right? I'll show you. We are going to write the first statement in Apex, right? We see how it allocates the memory, right? So to allocate the memory, right? Let's say I want to add two numbers, right? Two numbers, let's say I want to add two quantities. I don't want decimal digits, right? 100 and 500. It should add. Okay, so whatever the 100 and whatever the 200 we supply to hold that, right? So we need to allocate the memory. Okay, to allocate the memory. So the 100 or 200, whatever, or 500, whatever we give, right, to hold that in Apex programming language. So we have data types, right? The suitable data type is integer, right? We mention the type as integer, right? Integer. Okay. So when you want to write the memory statement, first we mention the type, integer, decimal, boolean, like that. And after that, give space and give the name for that memory, right? So if you don't give the name, we cannot recognize that one, right? Let's say one of the example, let's say a car, right? You have a car. Let's say you have some, you know, the model. Let's say Honda Civic is a car, right? It's like integer, right? One more model like maybe Toyota Camry, something that is a different type, right? It's like a decimal or boolean or something like this, right? So maybe Honda Civic, many people can have the same model, right? So if the cars are at same place, how we recognize our car? There should be some unique identifier for the car, right? So number plate, right? So It's like that. So when you allocate the memory, right, to recognize that, right, we need to recognize and we need to refer that value. So we have to give some name. Okay. So here to store, let's say we are giving two numbers and the numbers should be added. So to hold the first number, okay, so I'm saying number 1, right? And the second value, whatever we are going to enter, that is also a number, right? I'm going to define one more memory for that. Okay, so before I define that one, if you see, the statement should end with semicolon, right? Maybe in English we use full stop. Here we use semicolon. If you want, if you want, you can give space and write one more statement here only. Integer number 2. But we don't do that. Okay? If you give like this also, it will work. But in the program, to understand easily, so we write each and every statement in the next line. If you keep in the same line also, it will work. Okay? But in general, we give in the next line. Okay, now this memory, right? This memory name is number 2. This memory name is number 1. So do you want to, if you want to assign some value, right? So directly I can give some default value, right? So I can give a default value, right? So let's say you are buying a car. Along with the car, they give many things default, maybe seat covers or whatever. Like that here, when you allocate, you give something as a default, right? Let's say I'm giving 10. So later you can change. Later you can replace with something else. That is possible, right? So like that. Okay, here also I'm giving like this. There are two numbers, number 1 10, number 2 60. And to hold the result, again after adding sorry, after adding these two, the result also should be a number, right? Integer. And I'm saying result, I'm not giving anything, right? So later, so what we can do, result is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Okay, this is not a memory statement, right? This we discuss more. So when we deal with this here, okay, technically, so 10 plus 60, 70 will be assigned to this. Okay, about that we discuss more here. Okay, but as part of the memory statement, this is how we allocate the memory. This is how we allocate the memory and write the memory statement. Most of the times when you write any program, in the program we see defining like this and allocating the values and maintaining. Okay, so any questions so far, anyone? Any questions on understanding? Especially if you are from non-technical background, civil, mechanical, something. So are able to follow? Okay, let's say, yeah, this is about the memory statement. So now before we understand about the other types, so far whatever I explained, so all these are of the type. Again, there are two categories of the data types. So here whatever we listed and whatever we are discussing, okay, so all these are the primitive data types. Okay, primitive data types means, the meaning of the primitive data type is, we'll say call by value, means directly. So directly wherever we allocate the memory, there only the value will be stored. Okay, so that means when I say integer number 1, whatever the memory allocated, into that the value we can keep. It hold the value whatever we enter into that memory directly. So that we call as call by value. All these types are like that. We call these as primitive data types. But we also have non-primitive data type. For now, if you don't understand this, it's fine. Okay, so we need to understand few more things little later. Based on that, you understand even better way. Okay, just to understand at high level. So we have one more category called non-primitive data type. Here we say call by reference, right? So call by reference. That means, so when you allocate memory for this non-primitive type, directly in that memory we don't store the value. The value will be somewhere. We just store the reference, the location where it is. Okay, so that we call as non-primitive data type. Okay, so there are we have different non-primitive data types available. If you see all the database tables in Salesforce, we call that as a object. And also, if you remember, we have the standard object. The standard object is the database table by default provided by Salesforce. Right? The database table what we create, we call as custom object. Right? So we use this standard object and a custom object as a data type. Okay, some of the examples for standard object, we have account, contact, opportunity. All these are the standard objects. Okay, so account is the data type. Okay, some name, right? Like this. Okay, so when you define like this, the meaning is maybe to make you understand. Okay, so assume that this is account, right? So the account is nothing but company, right? Account name and let's say the company, city, state, country, company, industry type, something like that, right? So in this table, I want to insert one row, right? Or I want to, there is a row, let's say for now I'm giving something. Something like this, right? So let's say I want to store this value here, right? So account is the table. We mention the table type and we give some name, right? It's like account 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever you want, right? And here, so what we store, we don't store the data directly, right? This entire thing we don't copy and paste. We don't store like that, right? So what this type of memory holds is the location where the data present, right? Let's say the data is there in this website, the sheet name, maybe in the A2, right? In that location, right? So for now, maybe to make it easy, I'll say A2. That's the location in that table, account table, right? So it holds the reference. Okay, but the actual data present somewhere in the database, right? So where the row present in the database, that location it holds. These kind of things we call as non-primitive data type, right? Call by reference. That means only it holds the reference, means the location where the data present. The actual data will be somewhere else. Okay, but when you deal with the primitive type, it's not like that. Directly, whatever the value you assign, it will hold into that. So that's the difference between primitive and non-primitive. Okay, so for now, if you don't understand, it's fine. Slowly, if you so with the progress of other topics, you will understand in a better way. Okay. In the same way, we have some custom objects created. So we have course underscore underscore C, something like that, right? You can give some name and store that value like that. Going forward, we write some Apex programs. We can also use Apex program as a non-primitive type. Okay. So after writing the programs, that time you'll understand how we deal with this. Okay, for now, high level, just I want you to understand primitive data type means whatever the memory it allocates, directly into that it stores the value. Non-primitive data type, it won't hold the value directly in that. It will be somewhere else. It only gives the location. Okay. So like that, that's the non-primitive type. These things we should know. Okay. So with this, we are done with this memory statements kind of thing. Okay. So for your practice, right? And also, if you want to play with this, how it is working, I recommend you to, once you register with the Salesforce, to play with the code, whatever we are developing. So click on this gear icon and you see this developer console. In general, when you click on this one, it opens in a new tab, sorry, new window. Okay, so if you don't want to open in a new window, so while clicking on this, hold control. If you are using Mac, use command. It opens as a new tab within the same browser. So here we can, without having any program structure, the statements, whatever we are writing, if you want to execute and see whether whatever we are writing is correct or not, okay, you need to click on this debug and click on this. Okay, all you need to know is the navigation. So once you log into Salesforce, you need to click here, open developer console, here debug and open execute anonymous window. So here write the statements whatever we have, right? Let's say you want to understand whatever we are writing is correct or not. You can give and execute without without any error. If it is executed, you can say it is correct. And also when we execute the statement program logic, you see some log will be generated. Okay, here as a developer, we know how many bytes of memory it is allocating, where it started, where it ended, all those kind of things. Okay, so in future we understand more about these things. So for now, just to know the syntax, right? Like the grammar in English, right? When you compose email in Outlook, if there is a mistake with grammar, it will suggest, right? Like that here. So if you see, I'm not ending with a semicolon, right? It is throwing error, unexpected token, right? It's not executing. That means there is something wrong here. The thing is, a statement should end with semicolon. Okay, so play here. Okay, that's what I'm suggesting. I think since we don't have time tomorrow, we discuss more. Tomorrow we have more scope to write the statements, execute, and see how it is behaving, all those kind of things. Okay. Tomorrow we deal with this arithmetic, logical, right? These are the key things. If you want to do any calculation, right, we need plus, minus, multiplication, assignment, right? All those kind of things we deal as part of this, right? And the other things we'll discuss slowly. Okay, so yeah, before ending today, so any questions, anyone so far, whatever we discussed, any questions, anyone? Okay, so what I'll do, I'll share these notes and maybe the PDF, whatever I open, and all these things through email. Okay, check your email. I'll also share this recording and watch it, and so we continue tomorrow. Okay, before ending, any questions?